What's going on, guys? Black Fox here, back again with another sneaker custom video. In this video, I'll be customizing a pair of white on white Air Force One lows. There isn't an exact name for this custom or a straightforward idea. The initial idea was an inspiration based off the Kobe 6 Grinches, which recently came out a few years ago. With that being said, let's get started. Now before we start, the first thing that we're going to do is take off the laces. After removing the laces, the next step I'm going to take is add some souvenir shoe trees. What this would do, this will give me a sturdy surface to paint on these sneakers. You don't have to use shoe trees, but this is a personal preference for me. You can use socks, rags, clothes, whatever that you don't mind getting paint on, and stuff it into the shoe. After inserting the shoe trees, the next step is to remove the factory finish on the sneakers. If we were to add paint onto the shoes right now, and if I or somebody else were to wear these, the paint's going to immediately crack on the first wear, and it's not a good look. To avoid that, we're going to use acetone or nail polish remover to strip off the factory finish. You want to take your time with this to get every groove, nook, and cranny, and make sure that the factory finish is removed. One way you can tell if the leather has been prepped, if you take it to the light and there's some shine marks, or if you touch the leather and it's sticky. If there's no shine or if it's sticky, that means you're doing it right. After prepping the leather, I'll be using some Bulldog adhesion promoter. This is going to help the paint adhere better to the sneakers, especially since I'll be painting the leather and the soles. Just make sure to spray it outside because this stuff stinks and it's bad for you to breathe in indoors. After spraying the adhesion promoter and letting it dry for a few hours, the next step is to mask off the rubber soles. I'll be painting the leather uppers, and we don't want to get any paint on the soles quite yet. And in this case, I'll be using tape and paper towels to mask off the rubber soles. tip in regards to taping, you want to take your time with taping off an area you don't want paint on. In my case, it took me about an hour to mask everything off and make sure no paint will seep through. If you're taking about as much or more than 30 minutes, you're in the right ballpark. If you're taking less than 30 minutes, the odds are you have a high risk of getting paint on wherever you don't want to get it on. Now that the rubber sole has been masked off, the next step is to apply the paint. I'll be applying Volt from Jacquard into my airbrush. As tempting as it may seem, you want to go with light coats on the first 3 or 4 coats. After the 4th coat, you can go in heavier. The paint's coming out good so far. Everything is smooth between the leather and the tongue. If you take the steps I mentioned previously, you should get something like this. Now that we apply paint to the uppers, the next step is to mask off the areas that we don't want to get this fresh paint on. In this case, it will be the swooshes and the toe box. Now that we got everything taped up, the next step is use fluorescent green from Jacquard into the airbrush. Now that we got the toe box and the swoosh painted, next we're going to tape off the entire upper. For this reason, I'll be working on the sock liner, and we don't want to get any sort of paint on there, just to avoid creating more work. Now that I have the areas taped up, the next step is to apply the paint into the sock liner. But before you do that, you want to have a fabric softener to mix with the paint to keep that soft texture feel of the sock liner. In this case, I mixed some GAC 900 with the Volt color. The paint is applied to the sock liner. I'm going to be applying heat with a heat gun to set the paint into the sock liner. You don't have to worry about burning the sock liner, but I wouldn't advise keeping it close You want to keep moving the heat gun around to avoid any burn marks. But you'll do this for about 5 minutes, maybe more, but just keep moving the heat gun around to avoid burning one spot. So off camera, I decided to go for a different kind of green. It's pretty much more layers of the fluorescent green. I didn't really like how it was looking with the bulk green, so I decided to go for a different variation of the green. And so far, it's coming out pretty good. So after giving it a few looks, it looked a little too dark for me, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add some white paint from Jacquard, go over it again, just to lighten it back up when I put back on the fluorescent green.
Hip-hop is a way of life.
Now that I apply white near the top of the leather, the next thing I'm gonna do is apply a mixture of Grinch green and bulk to give it more of a gradient look. Now these are coming out much better than I wanted it to be. The next step, we're going to be working on the Nike Air on the tongue and on the back. I'll be using a detail brush to apply red paint to those areas. You don't have to use tape around it, but for me, I'm more precautious about the paint leaking, and I'm using Too Soft, which it has a tendency to leak after you apply it to fabrics. So I'll be wrapping tape around the Nike Air, at least on the back. On the tongue, I'll just freehand it. Before I get into applying the paint, I'm going to take off the green paint that is caked onto the fabric with acetone. One quick tip you can use if you don't have a detail brush, you can use a Q-tip or a toothpick, in my case, along the stitching. It may not cover it at first, but it'll get the details in more than, say, if you were just to go on with an angular brush or a full-on paintbrush.
A way of life, a way of thinking.
To become secure, I have to have value. I want to be worth something. I want to be worth enough to attract the attention of others.
I'm slowly getting closer to wrapping up this custom. The next step is to paint the rubber. Now, before you start coming at me in the comments, it's not advised to paint rubber, because as soon as you start wearing your shoes with painted rubber, especially on the soles, it's going to start wearing away and cracking. But in my case, I'll more likely put sole shields on, or if not, I'll probably just have this as artwork. So it won't be recommended if you were to paint the soles or any part of the rubber, unless if it's a small section. But just keep that in mind when you decide to wear painted soles.
Then what am I?
Now after covering up majority of the shoes and majority of the rubber, I'm going to paint the soles just green. It's just straight green from Angelus. Keep in mind, like I mentioned before, if you do plan on wearing your shoes, make sure that you have some sort of sole shield after you finish painting the soles, because if you just wear them straight on without it, the paint's going to fade and crack away. In my case, I put on some Bulldog adhesion promoter, which it'll give it some durability, but it doesn't give it a magic shield against the ground or how you wear your shoes. So the airbrush wasn't really giving me the results I wanted, so I ended up moving with a paintbrush. Still use the same color green, just I use the same techniques with the airbrush. To start it light, about the third coat, I went in a little heavier, and you should have something like you see on the left side of the screen.
What is this? A world of nothing? A world with nobody in it?
This is the world of perfect freedom.
Freedom?
Perfect freedom. A world in which you have no restriction.
Is this really freedom?
Yes, this is what it is. However, this world has nothing in it.
I'm not gonna lie, this actually came out way better than I thought. Just to make sure to protect this custom, I'm going to use a Krylon matte varnish. What is this going to do? This is going to replace the sheen that we took off in the beginning of the video, and it'll add an extra protection for the painted rubber. After letting the varnish dry for about 20 to 30 minutes, you should get something like this. Pretty clean and protected. So the next step we're going to take is dyeing the laces. I mean, nothing wrong with white laces, but for this custom, it would really stick out. So in this case, I'm going to just use the green that I used to paint the uppers and dip it into the jar and let it sit for about maybe a couple hours. Taking the laces out of the fabric softener green mixture, only thing you have to do now is use a heat gun to heat set it to prevent bleeding, and then lace them up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like what you see, hit the like button If you'd like to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button as I post restorations and customizations. Hell yeah. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. This is Black Fox. I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.